and welcome back to another episode of Jason's Game Room, the only podcast here on YouTube that talks about everything gaming, from board games to dice games to video games to CCGs. Remember that show I did on Pog? Pog is awesome, or at least it was awesome. If it has anything to do at all with the world of gaming, it's going to be on this show, and you're going to want to keep tuning in to see what I'm on about next. Now, a few shows back, I talked about the different kinds of cheating over the different genres of gaming, and I covered how people cheat and how it can be taken care of and why it ends up happening. Today, I want to talk more specifically about a certain type of cheater, and I'm going to be mentioning some names that you might be familiar with, and I also want to discuss why it's not a good idea to publicly empathize with these cheaters and what they've done. And I'm going to get into that right now and explain what I'm talking about. Now, this is mainly based in the world of CCGs. And for all of you people out there listening, oh, you talk about CCGs too much. I talk about every genre. It's just that I'm partial to CCGs because it's been a passion of mine since they came out in the early to mid-90s. But there's also a lot of material because CCGs happen to be that genre where a lot of cheating goes on every year, day in, day out. It doesn't seem to stop. Now, in terms of the cheaters themselves, you might have heard of some of these names, and I'll explain to you who they are and what they did. And these first few names come straight out of the Magic the Gathering tournaments and sanctioned events and things like that. The first one is a well-known cheater, and his name is Steven Speck. Now, if you're not too familiar with him, he is the player that was finally banned about 4 years ago from attending any kind of Magic the Gathering tournament because he would have a turn one win every time. He would win the game on the first turn before his opponent even got to play a card. How is that possible, you ask? Well, it's very simple. He would have a pre-constructed hand, his first hand of 7 cards, but he would not have it as part of his deck. His deck would be only 53 cards, and those 7 cards, also known as the God Hand, and I'm not going to get into the makeup of that hand. This is more about the overall aspect of the cheating. He would palm that God Hand either from a sleeve or hidden in a pocket or a shirt very craftily, and he would use a combo in that opening hand to pretty much wipe out the other player instantly. Instantly. There would be no retaliation. There would be nothing because that opponent would have his 20 life points gone in seconds without even having to play a card. And it took a while for people to catch on to this, especially tournaments, because you have to understand, as much as I like Magic the Gathering and its maker, which is Wizards of the Coast, and you've heard me say this on other episodes, they have been the slowest company to respond to cheaters in their game and actually dealing with them. It's been more advantageous for them to look the other way and let these high-profile cheaters keep playing. For what reason and to what end, I honestly don't know, and I don't understand it. They finally started to get tough over the past few years because there's been a major outcry from other high-profile tournament players and everyday players and people that just go to card shops and play at home, because enough is enough. You don't need people with no integrity and no morals tarnishing the games and ruining it. It's a reason why a lot of people get into CCGs but don't end up going to tournaments, because they see people like this that are going to cheat and say, well, what's the point of me going? I'm going to come up against one of these assholes and I'm going to be dead. It's not going to be fun. Therein lies the problem. The next guy who was finally banned a short time ago as well was Sebastian Wibmer. Now, if you're not familiar with him, he was caught on tournament camera, and again, if you're not familiar with a lot of Magic tournaments, they have cameras that point straight down at the table, and they have stats displayed on the video feed, and you can see both players' playmats and their hands out and their creatures and whatnot. The gaming field gives you a feel for the game if you're watching from a different room or from somewhere else, CCTV. He would palm cards off of his draw deck while his opponent was busy, and always grab a few extra lands and play an extra card that he wasn't allowed to. And he'd get away with this repeatedly until a lot of games were put with camera over the table. And I've watched a video clip lately from 2 years ago where he did that, and as someone who's played in tournaments, how do you not notice that? Someone grabbing, when they're supposed to draw two lands and they draw 3 or 4 and try to hide 2 extra cards and then hide it behind their fingers holding their hand. I'm always looking for things like that, not because I think the other player is going to do it, just because sometimes cards do stick together, even in the plastic sleeves, and that's my main concern, not so much the other guy's cheating, because that's a big implication to make, but the fact that cards do stick together. But for him to do it repeatedly and finally get caught, and at first Wizards of the Coast didn't seem to care, but then they, when the outcry got bigger, they took care of it. And finally, one of the biggest Magic the Gathering cheaters of all times, and most of you might already know who I'm going to mention here, name drop. And this guy, this is as far back as 15 years ago, or possibly farther. He was playing in tournaments and cheating up until about, I think, a couple years or so ago. He finally got banned for life. And that person is, of course, Alex Bertoncini. Talking about God hands and card palming and getting caught with his hand in the cookie jar and doing the same cheats over and over again with sticky cards and hiding things and coming up with cards out of his sleeves. Not to mention trying to play lands that are not colorless in a colorless situation and trying to get away with it, and did getting away with it for many years before he was found out. This guy is one of the biggest pieces of shit in Magic, and I personally think Steven Speck is a big piece of shit, but Alex Bertoncini takes the cake, and you might think I'm a little late to the party in criticizing him. I have criticized these people in the past, but remember, I didn't always have a show, and I wanted to bring this up in this episode about cheaters because he is the epitome of arrogant piece of shit cheater with no morals, no integrity, and these are the type of people that need to be weeded out of the game and banned for life. He has finally been banned for life from just about anything there is to ban for life in the world of CCGs. That makes me happy. It makes a lot of people happy. But shame on Wizards of the Coast for not getting to it sooner, because it's just painful to see so many people bring up the fact that someone is cheating, point it out, show proof, and nobody does anything right away. And not just the companies that make the game and sanction the events. This is also on the judges and the volunteers working the shows that either don't listen or are oblivious to what's going on. If you're working that show or tournament and someone tells you someone's cheating and you can tell they're serious about it, you got to do something about that right away. You have to disqualify people and get them out of the game. Like, it's just madness how long it takes to identify cheaters sometimes and get them going. A video game company on an online game, if someone's glitching, you'll see them banned rather quickly in some cases. Not all, but in some cases you'll see a lot of accounts terminated within days. But for some reason, when it comes to the world of CCGs, it takes months, years, longer. I don't know why they have their heads in the sand the way they do sometimes. It's nice to see them finally doing something about it, but come on, guys, we've been telling you about this for years. And that brings up another point, and I want to switch over to the Star Trek CCG because there are rumors that a multiple-time world champion in the first edition format by the name of Peter Ludwig might be a fraud. And there have been reports of him skimming the discard pile and doing a couple underhanded sticky cards tricks, but it can't be proven, and it has not been proved as of yet. Not every Star Trek CCG tournament has cameras over the table to monitor gameplay like Magic does, because it's not as big as Magic, obviously. Like it is, the tournaments do get rather large to a certain extent, but not to the extent of Magic, and you also have less volunteers and people working the events due to the smaller amount of capacity at the tables. But if I was the continuing committee right now, who is the main sanctioning body for the Star Trek CCG, and this is mainly because Decipher never listened back in the day when we brought up legitimate concerns of cheaters. I did at the time, and I'm going to go into a different rant on another episode about that. The continuing committee should seriously look into players that are even accused of cheating. If they didn't do anything wrong, clear them right away and move on. But when more and more players are mentioning that, hey, this guy or this person or this girl has cheated and it keeps happening and no one's listening, that sets a bad precedent. And in the case of Peter Ludwig, who's like a 2 or 3 time world champion, if he has been caught cheating and if he's been skimming the discard pile as bad as some people have said, then either an asterisk needs to put next to his name on that championship board, or you have to take away his 3 championships and promote the guy who came second. Or at the very least, run some kind of investigation to see what's going on. You can't just keep your heads in the sand like Wizards of the Coast did for so long and not do anything. Because this is why people get dissuaded from playing in tournaments. And as someone who has played CCGs since they came out, we need more people, new generations of players, to keep the games going and to keep tournaments going. You can't just have all this cheating and all this underhanded crap going on and not do anything about it. Because look what happened in the case of Magic, as I've already mentioned. A lot of people got dissuaded. They'll just play at home. They won't go to tournaments. And after a while, why should I play? I'm just going to lose anyways. That's a bad attitude to have sent out there, especially in regards to tournaments. Investigate these cheaters. Do it quickly. Get them out of the game. Ban them for life. Revoke anything they've ever won from the game. And let them do something else. Let them go play with crayons on a street corner or sidewalk chalk. But get them out of the game. It's important. Maintain the integrity and the honor of the game above all else. That's all for today. I thank everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends. Run around outside screaming, JGR! I mean, don't run out into traffic. You might get hit by a car. That ain't good. And more than anything, and the most important lesson I can ever teach you is game on!